Council meeting of December 1st, 2020 is called to order. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And how about James Bode tonight?
Deal.
Turn your mics off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
Back on here. Donna, will you do the roll call, please?
I will. Let me text Megan back. She's trying to get in.
Okay.
Councilmember Feast. Okay. Here's roll call. Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
And let me admit Megan, because here she comes, and then I'll call her.
All right. Oh, there's Megan. Hi, Megan. All right. Do we?
I'm doing roll call. Councilmember
Oh.
Feast, are you present?
I am. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about it.
Thank you. Does council have any late changes to the agenda tonight? Okay. At this time, I would like to remind members of the public that they can make comments during the public comment period, as well as on any items listed on the business agenda or the action agenda. Option number 1, join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link that is displayed on the city's webpage. The link is listed on the agendas and minutes page under the tab that says more. Option number 2, you can email City Manager Jeff Knighton. And option number 3, you can call Jeff's office phone. Both the email address and the phone number are displayed on the screen of the Mason Web TV streaming video. Are you ready to go to the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to accept the consent agenda as published.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on. Donna, do we have anyone interested in making a public comment tonight?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll recess from the regular meeting to open a public hearing about an amendment to the 2020 budget. Finance Specialist Don Queasme has details for us about an ordinance to amend the 2020 budget.
Good evening, Mayor Dorsey, Deputy Mayor Peterson, and council
Don.
members. For you that I haven't met, a couple of newer council members, I'm Don Quisme in the finance department, been working with Aaron now for about a year and a half. So what we have before us is a 2020 supplemental budget to increase within 2 funds. We need to increase the spending authority. So every, I don't know if it happens every year, but we have to review our budget as we're going through the year, and if we need to make an amendment for additional spending, then that gets presented to the council. So the 2 funds that we need to increase the amount are the tourism fund and the sewer fund. The tourism fund is a change with the awards that were given through LTAC, so we want to adjust that to the awards that were awarded for the communities groups that presented their tourism items. And in our budget book for 2020, at that point when we prepared the book, we knew that we had these authorizations were made for these different fundings that we were going to give out. So this is just adjusting that, getting it in formally into our budget. And then within the sewer fund, we had an unbudgeted expense of $240,000 connected with a bond payment be ready for the refunding bonds that we are getting refunded this year. So we have to increase the spending authority in that fund also. In general fund, we have one additional FTE that we have included in here. We didn't have to increase the spending authority for that because within the general fund, there was still enough spending authority, so we didn't have a problem going over budget and spending. And if there are any questions, I can answer them.
All right. Has anyone signed up for public testimony? Donna?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Will you give us a reading of the ordinance number, the first reading, ordinance number 1950-020?
Yes, ordinance number 1950-0320, an ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, amending the annual budget for the year ending December 31st, 2020.
All right. The staff is asking for a motion to move this ahead to the December 15th meeting. So do we have a motion?
I move that we forward this ordinance to the December 15th City Council meeting and place it on the action agenda for consideration.
All right.
Second that.
And we have a second from Megan. All right. Do we have any questions or comments to make?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
You know, this is a fairly routine process every year. However, specifically speaking to the tourism fund, I know we did some sort of last minute changes to how we do things. I would just like us to try to remain consistent when we're awarding these funds and then the subsequent budget supplementals that will follow on in the future. So if, you know, we can agree that just I think from the housekeeping perspective of budget management, it would just be cleaner if we continue to follow a normal procedure related to dissemination of funds for LTAC.
I couldn't agree more. We are working on making it the same for everybody. So
Awesome, thank you.
I do have a comment about that also, though. As we are building, you know, new opportunities for our community to connect, and I know we're in COVID right now, although, you know, with these funds, it has allowed us to do more community pride things. So where we can, I absolutely agree with you that we need to make sure that we have, you know, our processes in place, and it is, I want to learn more about the fairness aspect of what the mayor was talking about. But when we do have these opportunities to build more of these, you know, again, connectivity events and celebrating each other, I want to support that where we can. So.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that front. That said, we've had a long-standing LTAC process, and you know, to make a change, again, this isn't a huge issue to me, so much as it is just making sure we're communicating or what have you related to LTAC process, so that way when these great ideas pop up, they're all within, you know, our standard operating procedure for things. That's all.
all right. We have a motion and a second to forward the ordinance to the December 15th City Council meeting and place it on the action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is closed and we'll resume the regular meeting now. First item on the action agenda is an update on the C Street landfill. City Engineer Ken Gill has a presentation for us.
Good evening, council. Happy first day of December. It's good to see all your smiling faces out there in Zoomville. So tonight, I've got an update on our C Street landfill project. So I'm gonna share my screen with you. Okay, so you should be seeing a slide that says C Street landfill update. And I'm not hearing any Heisman signs or anything like that, so I think you guys are seeing all that.
Yep.
Tonight, I'm gonna, since the C Street landfill is probably on the top of everybody's minds around now, when that was going on, I'm just gonna back up a little bit, talk about what I told you about 6 months ago briefly, and then I'm gonna zip ahead and tell you what's happened since then. And then we're gonna spend most of our time talking about the next steps forward on this to get us to closing this thing out and being done with it. So C Street is over, C Street landfill is on the other side of the bridge over on 101. It's over by the cemetery. So it's inside that little black box there. It's got quite a bit of history. I went over this last time we talked about it, but we bought it a long, long time ago, over 80, 90 years ago now. And we've got an agreed order to clean it up. So we've done some drilling. We've done some sampling. We've collected some samples. We've dug some more holes with our backhoe. We've put all this together in a report. Ecology has approved this report. Recall one of the couple of recommendations in the report were to put a permeable cap over it. So that was the alternative number one. So that's kind of what I presented to you last time. Since then, this is new stuff. We've prepared a draft cleanup action plan. And I might say we prepared it. Carla Brock with Aspect Consulting has done this for us. Brooke talks about that in your council briefing. So this was slated to come before you a while back, but it got a little bit delayed. So since Brooke has written this, we've gotten acceptance on this report from Ecology. So there's the email. Brooke's defense, it came in after she wrote this. So she gets all the credit for that. Looking ahead is now that we've got these 2 reports approved, Ecology puts together and starts the public participation plan. So, and I shared this slide with you guys last time. So today I reached out to them and asked our contacts at Ecology, his name's Andrew, and when would that happen? And his best guess that he gave to us today was first quarter 2021. So I'm hoping by April 2021, we'll be able to share something with you, hey, and everybody else. This is what our studies found. This is what our plan is for closure. Tell us what you think. Once we go through that process, summer 2022 would probably be our best bet for construction. Summertime, you know, it's on a hill. Don't want a bunch of erosion down into the active gravel mine that Miles has down there off of Franklin. And the way we pay for it is through a remedial action grant that previous staff have gotten and that existing staff have applied for. So we've got about just shy of $700,000 in that grant now, and we've applied for another $500,000 through for the 2021-2023 biennium. So of 2022 construction would fit right into that Ecology biennium. So that's what I've prepared tonight. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them.
Ken?
Go ahead.
Yes, Ken.
So this is more grant money that we applied for other than what we have already, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So how much, I didn't quite get the number. How much is it? How much more have we applied for?
We applied for another $500,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good work, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah, great work.
All right, Donna, do we have public comment here?
I don't see anyone signed up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Any more questions or comments? If not, no, we'll just move this along. Next on the agenda is an ordinance for a franchise agreement with Cascade Natural Gas. City Manager Jeff Knighton has the details for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. This is the second reading this evening for a franchise agreement with Cascade Natural Gas. It's something that staff has been working on for quite a while, and we did work to ensure that the provisions in the agreement provide adequate protection for the public rights of way and retain the city's ability to move those facilities consistent with city needs if and when there are ever any issues with those facilities. Not that I foresee any, but just make sure that that provision was in the agreement so there wouldn't be any questions later. There is nothing in this agreement or in this particular agenda item that has changed since council first heard this item on November 17th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have public comment, Donna?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'll ask for a second reading of the ordinance number 1958-1020.
Ordinance number 1958-1020, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, granting Cascade Natural Gas Corporation a non-exclusive franchise for the transmission, distribution, and sale of natural gas.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number 1958-1020 as presented.
Okay. Any more questions for Jeff?
I'll second that motion.
Go, thank you. No more questions? Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1958-1020 as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now Jeff is going to speak to us about an update to city policies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. This is what you have in your packets, and it's available on our website for review, is a comprehensive policy update. Not all the policies in there were updated, of course, but we wanted to provide you with a full picture of what the policy of the city is and will be for the next several years. That's updated policies and policies in general that comply with the most recent state and federal law are very much part of how a professional organization operates. It's one of our core foundations, and I know it's something that the council has asked for since I got started here. And it is, however, a huge endeavor that we finally been able to complete. And I want to express my thanks to our project manager for this, our administrative services director, Michelle Sutherland. She did an excellent job herding chickens, as it were. It's not easy. It's not easy to keep track of all the versions. It's not easy to keep track of all the different suggestions and ideas. And she did a great job in doing that. So there's a couple of things I wanted to go over. Like I said, it's a comprehensive policy. There are 438 pages, I believe. So I'm not going to read each one since we don't want to be here till midnight, but there are a couple that I did want to mention specifically. And the first one I wanted to mention is Administrative Policy 100-01. That's a policy that hasn't been updated since 1991. And basically what that says is that there are differences between city policies, which are the council's realm and authority to review, and then there are administrative policies, which are my responsibility. Basically, what it comes down to is if a policy affects all city departments, that is a council city policy. If it affects just one department or one or two departments, it's an administrative policy. However, we provided both administrative and city policies to you in this packet, and we'd be happy to listen and take into consideration what the council has to say on any administrative policy that we have. Second one I wanted to mention, and this one's brand new, is our fraud prevention policy. And these are controls that the city needs to have to ensure that we protect ourselves against fraud, protect ourselves and our citizens against fraud. Something that comes out of our finance department, and one that I wanted to highlight to ensure that the council and the citizens are well aware that we are doing everything we possibly can to protect city assets and our internal resources. That's policy 300-35, if you want to take a look at that. Or if you've already reviewed it and have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer any of those. Back to a couple of other new policies that are general administration, and they are city policies. Another one I wanted to highlight is the conflict of interest policy. And that's to ensure that people, the council and the citizens of the city are aware that we will not have conflict of interest. There will be nothing behind the curtain, nothing in a back room done anywhere. Everything we do is transparent and out in the open, and are happy to discuss anything with the council or any actions the city has taken with the citizens of Shelton. It also has, because the holiday season's coming up, the receipt of gifts policy is part of that. And basically we can't take anything as a gift that's over $25 in value. And that's something that is incredibly important for me. There are exceptions to that, but only in what I'm thinking about as exceptions are things like, a large fruit basket, but only if it can be shared with every employee in the area. We tend to get a lot of those things during the holiday season, and we don't want to turn them away, but we also want to be very transparent about that. So if it's anything more basically than a pen, we cannot accept those types of things. A couple of the important ones that I wanted to mention, or at least important in my eyes. Both of these are also new. One of them is the core ethics policy. And I've highlighted all these because I think it's very important for the council and the citizens to know, as well as all the city employees to know, that we do have a standard core ethics about how we treat people, how we do city business, how we operate as an organization. Basically what that comes down to is stewardship, and that's acting at all times in the best interests of the community we serve. Integrity, we will always hold integrity as one of our highest values, and that we demonstrate excellence and honesty in all of our actions. Respect and accountability. We have to respect that the community that we serve and respect all the people within it, regardless of their point of view, and that we are accountable for our actions. And that's not to say that we will never make mistakes, because we will, but we will own those mistakes and we will do better next time. We'll strive not to make them, but they will happen. And when they do, we'll own them. Basically what it comes down to. Cooperation and collaboration. We build strong relationships with our partners in the community, leadership and reputation. And that basically is our core ethics policy, but it's also an element, a major element of our team philosophy policy. What that is, we're all a team here. We all work together, and we all work together to do the types of things that I just mentioned: stewardship, respect, and accountability. All those elements that I talked about. And then the last one that I wanted to mention is what we're calling the council deliberation or council review policy, and that goes hand in hand with what we've talked about over the last couple of months. No, I guess it's somewhat of a change when we have a council action that's either a motion or a resolution, which neither one of those are laws. They are the city resolves, or the city makes a motion to, city council makes a motion to purchase something. Those will be discussed with council in briefing, and if any of the council would desire more than one meeting, then we can certainly do that. But generally, those two types of things are only going to come to council on the action agenda. And then for ordinances, which are laws, there will be 2 readings unless waived by council. There's a couple of specific exceptions where you have to have 2 readings. Council doesn't have the authority to waive. I'm thinking of things there like annexations. So, but we'll definitely point those out to you when and if they come up. But generally what this is meant to do is streamline processes, make sure that we are as agile as we can be as a public body to respond to opportunities or issues that come up as they come up, rather than having to wait and go through an entire process. It's all part of the idea of streamlining the operations of the city so that we can be as efficient as possible. However, we also have to make sure that as a government agency, we make decisions in the best interests of everybody and not specific individuals or groups. So we will still have a deliberative process. The council will have a deliberative process and be able to weigh in on these types of decisions at your discretion. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions about any of the policies that I just talked about, or any of the others that we sent to you in that packet.
Anyone sign? Oh, you got something, Eric? You're muted, Eric.
You're on mute, council member.
Darn. My only concern was the 1000-02R, the general facility charges under B and C. The language says 2 years. We'll waive the fees within 2 years for GFCs, but we have lots that actually we surplus and sold that lot behind the hamburger stand and telling people, hey, this is grandfathered in for GFC charges. So I think that 2 years is pretty restrictive and might discourage some development on some of the infill lots in town. And I thought the rest of council might be interested in talking about that.
Yeah, so just as a little bit of a background, the city instituted general facilities charges in 2007. So previous to that, we did not have any. Public Works Director Harris and I talked about this a little bit today. If it is part of the council's desire to encourage infill development and say something like, and I just off the top of my head, but just something to think about, say something like, if the property has ever used GFCs or ever had GFCs previously, sewer connections and water connections, then the same or similar structure could be built, but we could keep the language in there about, if you upsize a meter or something like that. So it's not a blanket. But happy to have council talk about that and kind of think about the different ways to structure.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it'd be good to, as we, move on with some of this, I think it'd be good to talk through some of that in more specifics, that, kind of the pros and cons of either approach. I'm kind of unfamiliar with general facility charges and when they apply and when they don't apply sort of situations. So it'd be good to talk about that in the future. Agree with that.
Okay. And we will be talking about that as part of the development code update. We'll be talking about that and other pieces and parts. It gets pretty complicated pretty quick, but with this policy, we can make that revision and then revisit it at a later time when we talk about the development code, if that's acceptable to everybody.
I mean, it is attractive if you buy a lot in town and don't have to spend, $10,000 on GFCs when it's already had utilities in the past. It's just what I was thinking. So it could get some of these lots filled. So that's just what was my thought when I was reading through these. And by the way, thank you for the 459 pages of homework that you gave us this week.
Thanksgiving reading.
I read all of them.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about that? And like I said, when we
How about you, Jay? Did you want to say something about it?
Yeah, Public Works Director Harris, good evening, Council and Mayor. So the GFC, that policy came from others. It's pretty standard in the industry that if you demolish a house, let's say, that was built in the 30s, and the lot is vacant for some time, even though it had water and sewer service, that you would pay those capacity charges. Most of it is because when the GFC was adopted, most of the houses that are getting tore down and put back up or whatever, if you do it within the 2-year period, you don't have a problem. But none of them originally paid the GFC to begin with. So that policy is actually pretty common in most development codes in Oregon and in Washington. We could take it out, obviously, is one option. Another option is to say anybody prior to the adoption of the GFC ordinance would have to pay, and that the people that after the adoption of the GFC ordinance, if they had water and sewer paid for the GFC, they wouldn't have to pay, obviously. So we have options there: removal or set a date and time in the policy, or leave it the way it is.
Let's go back to the example of the property that we surplus and sold with the attraction of being no GFC charges. This new policy, when they decide to build a nine unit apartment or whatever they were going to build there, they'd be paying the GFC charges, correct? Under this new policy.
Yeah, they would be. So the way that worked is if it had water and sewer previously, like to a little house or something, and with an apartment, they obviously put in a much larger meter. If the house was ripped down and within a 2-year period, they got their permits issued, we'd credit them for the smaller house meter, and they'd only pay the difference in general facilities charges in that instance. If it never had any water and sewer, they'd pay the full GFC charge. They wouldn't get credited for something that never existed, for the utilities that never existed.
It was an apartment complex and it did have water and sewer. So that was my question. This new policy would charge them, even though that the pitch to sell this property, which sold for way too cheap, was that, hey, you don't have to pay the GFCs for this property, so that's just.
Yeah, and they would, if they already had water and sewer, whatever they developed, if they put in a much higher use, much bigger meter, they just pay the difference. They'd get credited the existing GFCs.
Well, I'm sure there's no GFCs there because we're talking 20 plus years ago. I mean, it was a brick hollow building for the last 20 years that I can think of until they tore it down.
Yeah, everybody's grandfathered in though, right? So, I mean, the house that was built in the 20s, even though they didn't pay the GFC, if they go and replace that house in a 2-year period, they don't pay any GFCs.
Okay, but we're talking about lots that have no houses right now that had a house at one point in time more than 2 years ago.
That's correct. They would pay the additional GFC at that point because they can lay vacant for a long period of time.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Kathy. I see you were.
Thank you. So let's take, someone builds a house on a lot, and let's say 3 years after they've built it and they've paid the GFC on it, and the house burns down and the lot sits for a little while longer and a new owner comes in. Are they gonna have to pay that?
Nope.
Nope.
If they build the new house within 2 years,
2 years.
But what if
Yep.
it's like 3 years? What if it's like 3 years?
they're gonna have a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
then under this, the way it's written, they would need to pay if it sits for 3 years.
Brendan, Snohomish has theirs set at a year. Spokane has it instantaneously for the most part, which I was really surprised.
Yeah.
Anyways, there are people all over the map on this. I put 2 years in there. I thought a year was a little too short.
Yeah, there's two different ways to look at this. One is that, yes, we are, if a lot has sat vacant for more than 2 years, then to build something on it would be an additional cost. But the other way to look at it is as a encouragement to, if a house burns down or if a house is demolished, to immediately rebuild it to save yourself that money. That's kind of the give and take of that policy position.
Councilmember Bode?
That's a hard one because we're dealing with lots of things. I mean, you get people that have a house that burns down and they're emotional about it. They don't sell it for 2 years. And then somebody buys it and has to take that GFC on when they shouldn't because it was already a house there. This is where it's hard because there was already an established house there. And that person might have collected insurance money and maybe it was an emotional thing to them and they didn't want to resell that home for 2 or 3 years because it was their family home. Like,
Right.
so I'm going off on it, but those GFCs add up and they definitely hit people's bottom lines. So
Yeah, my thought is just encouragement to actually fill these lots. I mean, this doesn't, and all these lots have not had a house on them. Most of them for 2 years. There was a fire, there on Oliver Street. Maybe that house was less than 2 years ago, but most of the lots we have not had a house on them for more than 2 years. So if we want them built, it's attractive that you don't have to pay the GFCs.
it is. It's very attractive.
So we can.
I'm sorry, I have a comment that one issue is if you don't charge capacity charges, somebody eventually pays. Usually it's the ratepayer in higher sewer rates or higher water rates that we got to get caught up on, whether it's I&I, whether it's a planned expansion, whether it's a pipeline resizing, whether it's a lift station that needs additional capacity. So we're getting done with the new sewer comprehensive plan. We're almost done with the water comprehensive plan. So we're going to be talking a lot about projects that are out there that need to be done. It's a 20-year look, right? So there's some longer term stuff there. But the intent of the GFC, the way it's currently written, is for capacity charges and improvements. The state of Washington actually allows you to include other type of non-capacity projects in there. We currently don't have that though. There was an ordinance that was written that said it's for capacity projects only. So anyways, that allows us to keep up with growth, because what happens is if we don't, then as that new user comes online, we're always going to be behind with the wastewater plant isn't big enough, or lift station isn't big enough, or reservoir, or whatever the subject is. So if we can get caught up on it, it will help future people as they come online to get these capacity improvements at least more in line. Because what happens is, we have one up on the hill right now that there's significant issues with water pressure and sewer line capacity and other stuff. So the developer is going to, if he wants to develop, is going to either have to pay out of his project, we're going to have to do an LID, or there's going to be some line extension agreement or something like that. So you look at different ways of funding it. But we do need to keep up on our capacity projects moving into the future, and that's where the GFCs are important.
But we're not talking about all projects. We're talking about lots where there's a house, no house, a house, no house, trying to get people to entice them to build on those lots. And we're not talking about every project. We're not talking about getting rid of GFCs. Just these some of these lots that have been vacant for a while, and So.
Mayor Dorsey, if I may.
Oh, I see.
the other thing I'd like to mention is that the flip side of that is by encouraging development on these lots, in theory, we are increasing the number of residents and taxpayers into the city system, which should provide, some relief instead of having that tax burden spread over a very small number of households, that now we have more people paying into that long-term growth. And while I agree with Mr. Harris that we do need to be looking at that long-term growth and planning for capacity, I do think that there are times when incentivizing infill in the city limits is going to be very important for us to be able to sustain our system for the current taxpayers.
Not to be flippant, last time I checked our general fund, we didn't have much wiggle room to be incentivizing at this point. And I understand that. And that's why I would love to talk more about this, because I would love to understand what the financial implications look like, or what the incentive situation may look like, because I know we're very tight on that front. So I don't want to say table this for now, but I would definitely love to talk more. And it sounds like between Bode and Eric, good catch on that. I totally forgot about the apartment behind the Ritz and what was sort of promised, if you will, at that time. I think we should talk more about this. And I think it absolutely dovetails into the development code. So sorry to interrupt.
It
So
does.
go ahead, Councilmember.
Megan had something too.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to recommend that we make a modification to the recommended motion and consider taking this policy out of the packet so we can do some more work on it, and then consider, if we don't have any, other discussion about other policies, we could accept the whole policy package, removing that one.
So
do we have to approve it tonight?
Just to clarify here, this is a public works policy, so it is an administrative policy. It is not a city policy. But what I'm hearing the council say is that you would like us to revert back to where we have, if service was provided to a lot at any time in the past, then GFCs will not be required so long as there is proof. GFCs will not be required to rebuild a similar structure.
Correct.
Now, if somebody wants to take a house and they want to put, 5-person duplex on it, that's a different thing. Or a what do they call it?
Fiveplex.
Triplex or whatever it is.
That is a different thing. Because that takes different water services, different sewer services. They have to have their own lines. We're dealing with a whole different thing than if I found a lot that was burnt down 4 years ago and I want to build a single family home where a single family home was.
Yeah.
So, just once you step into multi-unit, you're in a whole different world anyway. So
we can change that language, and we can do that with your motion tonight. We can change that language to say that, and I'll show it to you again just to make sure we accurately captured the intent of what you're telling us. And then we can take a look at this particular policy and others in conjunction with our development code rewrite, as that's coming up, here next year.
So,
I think Kathy, yeah.
Yeah. Can Jay or Jeff, can you tell me the approximation from one end to another what a general facility charge can be for, let's say, a single family home, 1,500 square feet, maybe to 2,500 square feet? What would be the range on that? Would it all be the same, or would there be a different cost?
Your general facilities charge is based on the meter size. So whether you have a 4,000 square foot home or a 800 square foot home, you're generally looking at a half inch, if I'm correct. So that would all be the same cost. I don't know what that exact number is.
$1,260 for water.
$1,260.
$1,260, and the sewer is 3,258.
Mm-hmm.
And those were actually cut in half in 2016. It looks like they were divided by 2, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They were quite a bit higher than that. Most other agencies are double where ours are at right now.
But your general facilities charge is based on your capital facilities planning. So you do your planning out for, 20 years, and you do that based on your expected population and everything else. You take what the expected costs of those projects are, and then what the share of the new development is, whatever that percentage is, and that's how you come up with your number. Unless you just decide to divide it by 2. So that's how we came up with the number that we currently have in our master fee schedule. But Public Works Department is doing a sewer system study, which will take a look at all the capital projects that are going to be necessary, and they're also doing a water system plan, I believe. So we'll figure out what the cost of those facilities are going to be, what the public share is, what the share of expected grant dollars are going to be in order to come up with whatever the number that GFC will be. I expect it'll be relatively close to what it is now. They don't generally change that much, although I'm not sure here, just because capital planning maybe needs a bit of refinement. So, but we'll keep council informed each step of the way. And when we start to redo the development code, and we start with a public involvement piece of that, we will certainly be sharing all that information with both the council and the public.
Anybody else?
I do have one more thing to say on an incentive issue. When people come in and want to build in the city, it's really nice to have some incentives for them, because in the long run, down the road, their hookups are going to be paying for future water and sewer in the city. So you put these incentives in front of somebody, and they're more apt to build if they know there's going to be a good carrot in front of the horse's nose. Because down the road, we're going to be making money on the sewer and water with them. So that's all I have to say on that.
Well, we've done some incentive projects before, and if we want to, I think that we should probably go back to the analysis of what the value add was during that time, right?
Yeah.
If that kind of plan worked during that time,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm so for the development of our town and filling in these spaces. I'm going to go back and recommend, Mayor, that if getting clarification from City Manager Knighton that and a reminder that these are city policies. There's obviously some more work that needs to be done with this particular policy, and more information that we need as well, so we can feel more comfortable as we move forward. But I would like to see, there's a lot of work that does need to be done, in this planning period in the next couple months too. So I think we should provide some grace to staff, and allow them to work this through. They've heard a lot of discussion from us. We're very obviously passionate about it. So I think we should let them move into their work so that we can get this done, so we can get all this stuff built and going really good.
All
And
right.
Megan, I don't know if can I say one more thing and then I'll be quiet? There's a lot of people that come in and want to build, and they said they can't afford it because of the cost of everything that builds up for them to build. So we have to look at that, how that's affecting our city. Are we losing businesses and people building their homes because the cost of building, just the hookup part with the city?
Well, I'll say that the incentive is already there. They lowered the rates. The commission, you and the other commissioners lowered the rate 65%. I think that was the incentive. I just want to get some of these lots filled, and I think that the incentive is just, if they've had the sewer and water, then they're grandfathered in. That was all I wanted to bring up on this policy.
Yeah.
So we'll revise the language to do what Councilmember Enisco just mentioned. And then we will bring it back as part of a comprehensive update, both this policy and others that are associated with development, along with the new development code, and run it through the development code update process in 2021.
Yeah, with the cost already being cut in half, I mean, that's like Eric, was that Eric or Joe said that was a pretty good incentive right there. But maybe there's other ways that we can give incentives. Also, that's just an idea.
I've heard, hey, you know, if we can get general fund going good and we can get out of COVID and we're, you know, we got businesses happening again, let's literally have a sidewalk sale. Let's give some free sidewalks away to some of our folks that want to come in and build their homes. That would be a beautiful present in the future.
Okay. All right, so
So,
Go-
Mr. Mayor,
public comment on, oh, go ahead, Deidre.
can I comment on a different topic?
Sure.
So now that we've kind of talked to that a little bit, and I look forward to continued conversation regarding the development code, I think all of us are really excited to see where that can take us. I did want to jump back to the 3-touch rule, and I know we've talked about this as we move from a commission to a council. We've talked about it several times since then. You know, in some cases, it makes sense to me that we don't need 3 touches. The art installation at the Civic Center happens like clockwork. We know that it's a standard policy, but I do have some concern with minimizing the amount of public interaction as part of our deliberations. And I think it's really important, not necessarily for the folks sitting at, quote, this table, but in general, that we are setting the standard for what the expectation is for public to have input in the process. And I still have some real consternation surrounding not requiring multiple avenues or multiple platforms for people to have that say, because we have seen in the past where decisions are fast tracked and we have had long ranging financial implications, policy implications. And so I really have some concern with reducing that down. I appreciate the fact that our current policy already allows council to take things like the Arts Commission installation and fast track that. But I do really worry about not only the public perception, but the commitment to our public transparency, which staff and the council have worked very hard to build. And I wanted to bring that up to hear if the other council members have thoughts on that topic.
Can you give me the number on that, Deidre, so I can find that again?
Oh, I think that is part of 100-10. Is that right, Jeff?
100-10.
Deidre,
Mhm.
Deidre, may I say something, Mayor?
Yes.
Is your concern keeping the 3-touch on some of the subjects that we have?
Yes, particularly with anything that has either a change or is a new policy, and or if there's something that is a significant financial implication for the city. I can think of some examples from years ago where, you know, being less active in city council and city business than I am now, I wouldn't realize that something was about to be voted on. And we've also seen where things had been jumped and they didn't do the 3 touches, which is why at that time it was put into place. And I have some concern about making sure that we have adequate public input. And while I appreciate, and the operations manager in me says, go efficiency, agility, we need this, trying to balance that with the need for transparency in that process is really important to me.
I agree.
Well, Deidre, what about if we did it like we're doing it now with the business agenda and the action agenda, but on the action side, we don't need them to come down and give us a big presentation, the same one we had 2 weeks prior.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't.
Maybe I'm not
Go ahead, Joe.
but I thought that's what we did. I thought that's what this change is exactly doing. If it's an ordinance, if it's something outside of budget, the already adopted and approved budget, if it's policy, that is a 2-read situation. If it is paying the bills within budget, And everything else, we discussed that in briefing. I guess that's kind of more boilerplate business that is seemingly delayed weeks, few weeks because of the turnaround. I guess I'm not really seeing much of a change other than, and I don't disagree with the transparency concern, but I don't see much of a change, I guess. Maybe I'm not understanding or
well, and
grasping
perhaps
it the
I'm
same way.
misreading or misunderstanding it, but from the conversations that we've had surrounding this, we're using briefings as our first of the 3 touches. And so if something hits our meeting agenda and someone doesn't see that, and now we're at a second meeting and we're now voting on it, and there's not adequate opportunity for input, that's my concern. I think council is very well aware of the process and staff works very hard to get information out. But when it comes to those types of things, I have some long range worry, I guess is the best way to say that.
So I can corroborate what Deidre's thinking and feeling right now, because as I started hearing this conversation this evening, and I know that we've talked about policies and this has been coming, this is a good example of seemingly not having enough time for folks to have input, I guess.
Yeah, under the policy, it does say 4.2.3 that the resolution considered by the Shelton Council shall be heard in a single meeting unless a majority of the council desires a second meeting. So a majority could decide on that second meeting.
Well, and I guess my concern is I think that the council has ample opportunity to request additional time, make sure that we are heard amongst one another. My concern is if we have a single meeting and it's gone, what does that do for someone who that particular policy may impact, or they found out about it later than they should have? I mean, certainly we want to continue to work hard as staff has to get out the looking ahead and give people opportunities to know what's coming down the pike so it's not a surprise. But just because council's well informed and decides to take it in one swoop doesn't necessarily mean that our public is well informed on a particular topic.
All right. Anyone else? So I'm taking it we're not going to have this motion tonight. So we're going to table this, or we're going to have a revised motion. Anybody?
But the general facility charges, Jeff, you said we were just going to change those and bring those back to us.
I can change those and bring that back to you as part of the development code update. As far as the council deliberation or council review policy, if that's something council desires to change, I would recommend that you table the entire discussion and I'll bring it back to you in January.
Okay.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
So we're moving to table the entire, what's the name of the whole, sorry.
The proposed city policies.
Okay, so I moved to table the proposed city policies.
And is that date certain, Eric?
Jeff? Till what date?
January 19th.
Until January 19th.
Okay, that's our motion. Anybody have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Hey, wait.
Been motion and second.
Eric motioned it. Who seconded it?
Oh,
Pick me or
I think
James.
that I heard
Go
vote,
for it.
yeah.
I'm gonna put James.
it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, Jeff, let's move on to your city manager report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing I wanted to mention this evening, and other than I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday, we were able to complete a grant program with our partners at the Economic Development Council. Very much appreciate their help in assisting in the distribution of $40,000 $2,500 each to 16 individual businesses and organizations, so that we, as the city, could help our organizations and our friends and neighbors stay afloat and do the best they can through this difficult time. And that's all I have.
Want to say oh, sorry, Eric.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work you guys did on the policies also. There's our government at work for us, right?
Same. I wanted to say thank you to the staff for all the hard work on the policies. And, also wanted to say thank you for your work on getting those CARES Act dollars to our business community. I have direct feedback from some of those businesses, and they were really appreciative of it was a really, really quick turnaround also for them to apply and then get the funds back into their bank account. So just appreciate the collaboration.
Okay. Anybody else tonight? Our
I
next
have a
meeting. Oh,
question.
Kathy's got one.
And it's just off the subject, but what date are we looking for Shop with a Cop? You know, Jeff?
That's been canceled this year.
Okay, all right, I thought so. Thank you.
But if I may, on that note, Christmas isn't canceled. And so thank you to the city and all of the partners who have been working so hard for the christmastownwa.org site, and Rachel Hansen and her family, city staff. The lights look beautiful downtown. And I think people are really happy to have a little bit of joy this season. It's been a really tough year. And so thank you to everyone who's been part of making that possible.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 15th at 2020 at 6 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned at, what time is it? 7:02.